You got a fun wet fly if you're interested in working on your matched and married wings. This is the Lake George. It's a very bright fly, easy to tie for the most part. It has all the usual pieces and parts of wet flies. The tail is, I'm using a Goose shoulder here and Goose Quill for the wing. But it's a simple little fly in regards to the proportions for each of the different slips, your white and your red and your wing. You just want to make it so that the red scarlet is pretty much down the middle of the wing. Mine tend to be a little bit lower, and that's just a proportion thing, making certain the tops and bottoms are the same, but they still fish very well and they are still a very attractive fly. Like I said, if you're wanting to get into the matched and married wings, this is a great fly to start out with. That's the Lake George, and I'll get started. I'm going to start the Lake George by putting my hook in the vise. This is a Mustad 3399 in a size 4. I'm going to debarb the hook, and I'm going to attach my thread. First, I'm using a Danville 6/0 in white. You don't want to darken up the red floss body on this. Attach this about an eye length behind the eye of the hook. Run my thread all the way down to just past the point of the hook so I can put in my tip. The tip on the Lake George is a gold tinsel. I'm using a Danville size 14. It's a silver and gold Mylar tinsel. I'll tie that in with the silver side up, 3 wraps to secure it, and then I shall 4 wraps of the tinsel down the hook shank, down the bend, and 4 wraps back up to make the tip. Tail on the Lake George is made from scarlet hackle. I'm going to use some Goose shoulder. Because this is a larger hook, I'm going to go ahead and cut these so that these slips are a little bit wider. They're probably anywhere from 6 to 7 barbs wide. I'll get those tips matched up. Peel those off. Then I want to have those so that they splay out. I want to get the tips of those matched up. And then I'll measure those about a shank length long, a little bit longer. I like a little bit longer tail on these larger wet flies. Wrap that in and bind that into all the way back to the beginning of the tip. Be careful not to go too far down the bend of the hook there because you'll push the tail in a downward direction. Also, you want to make certain, I got that wrapped on my side of the hook, and that's why it's not setting right. So you want to make certain that you do have that right on top of the hook shank. Don't use too much thread tension on this because you can pull and twist those hackles, I should say those barbs, over to the other side. But if you have those both right on top of the hook shank, then you should have a nice even tail. I think one of these is just the barbs have a little bit more curve into them. That'll work. I'm going to trim these the length of the body. Now I'm ready to attach my rib. The rib on the Lake George is the same gold tinsel. That's the Danville size 14 gold Mylar tinsel. I'm going to tie that in with the silver side up. Bring that all the way around to my side and on the underside of the hook. One wrap to secure that. The body is a red floss. I'm using a Danville 4-strand Rayon floss in red. I'm using all 4 strands on this because this is a larger size hook. Once I have that tied in, a couple of wraps moving forward now to secure that. I'll put some more wax on my thread. And I'll advance my thread forward, binding all of that in. Nice touching turns, as close as you can get, so that I have a nice even underbody. And I'll stop with my thread about an eye length from behind the eye of the hook. I'll wrap the floss body in, and then 5 turns for the rib, and then we're ready for the throat and the wing. Now I'm going to attach my black thread. This is a Danville 6/0 in black to finish the fly off. I'm going to go ahead and get some wax on my thread. I'm going to wrap about halfway down the head and then cut away the black tag as well as the white thread. That way, I'll get this little tiny sliver you can see right there of the black and the white when I cut that, but as I advance the thread down to the end of the head to tie in the throat, it'll get covered up. For the throat on this, normally I would just use a white Schlappen feather, but mine isn't that good. It's kind of a dingy cream color, and it's pretty sparse. So using what I have, I'm going to go ahead and use this is a whiting hen saddle. And I'm just going to take a large feather like this off of that and then use, the thick webby barbs right near the base, putting those together to make up my throat. This is a nicer, brighter white color than the white Schlappen that I have. Wrap those in and secure those in on the underside. Trim away the excess, and we're ready for the wing. I'm going to clean up this space right here around the head a little bit so I have a nice even platform for tying in the wing. The wing on the Lake George is a white and scarlet quill. I'm using some Goose quill here, and it is basically an all-white wing with a red stripe in the center of it. So I've already cut those out, and I have those together here for my wing. The red stripe is generally only about 4 barbs, maybe 5, as long as they're even on both sides. Generally, the bottom and the top of the each wing is going to be the same width in the white, and then the red's right in the middle. Make certain those tips are even, and then double check that they're the same width, and then we can tie those in. We'll want the length to be halfway down the tail. I'm going to go ahead and assist this by just kind of pushing down on the front and then pulling my thread down, wanting to make certain that I am at the back of the head space, not up by the eye of the hook, while I get those secured in. Nice thing about the Goose quill, and especially with this floss body, is the wings will lay pretty much nice and along the back of the hook shank and the fly itself. They won't tend to cock up at an abrupt angle. Once that's tied in, we have that nice and secured. Trim away the excess. Bring my thread down to the eye of the hook, working my way backwards to cover up the butt ends of the wing. Once I have those all covered up nice and neat, I'll put in my whip finish to finish off the Lake George. I'm going to flatten out my thread. Get a 10-turn whip finish in here. Nine or 10. And trim away my thread. Some head cement on both sides here. That will soak down in, secure that head up real well, and then I will come back and put some lacquer on that in just a moment. So that's the Lake George. It's a pretty fly. It's a great fly if you're wanting to work on matched wings tails are pretty easy because of the goose shoulder. It's fun to work with. The matched and married wings on this, like I said, if you're wanting to get into doing that, using the goose quill on this larger size hook, it's much easier to marry that up and work on your skills for getting your proportions right and everything else. And it's a fun fly. I think it's a very good fly for clearer waters, and I think it's going to have a nice contrast in the water and will pretty much pop out for the fish pretty well. That's the Lake George. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned at least a new pattern, if not a new technique, maybe a tip or trick here and there. If you have any questions about this fly or any of the techniques used in constructing this pattern, please leave them in the comments section down below. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'll go to the trouble to answer it. If you'd like to help dressed irons, please share this video with your friends and anybody you think that might enjoy this pattern. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.